What if you had the choice to press the big red button? What if you could choose the fate of the future of warfare? What if you could change your own fate by determination and free will? Is biological evolution really the next step for mankind? Is mankind going to be able to withstand the sacrifices that progress entails? These and more questions are pondered by Armored Core 6. And in this video, we're going to go over the NG++ content of Armored Core 6, which is turning out to be one of the best games I've played in a long time. So without further ado, be my buddy in this incredible journey of discovery and pondering the dreadful questions relating to the future of mankind that Armored Core 6 portrays in this awesome game. First of all, I'd like to remind everyone to please subscribe to the channel and please give a like to the video. It will help a lot if you just press the subscribe button, even if you don't like the video, just to be updated on the content that I give out on the channel. I'm gonna be posting, obviously, after this resurgence that I've got. Thank you guys so much, because that video did very well. Now, 99% of people who watch that video aren't subscribed to the channel, so just please press the subscribe button. This is your spoiler warning, since I recommend NG++ very strongly. I did not know that there was an NG++ option in this game. I thought that NG+ was it, and that there were some decisions to be made, and there were, and it was interesting, but NG++ is where most intense content is of the game. So if you haven't gotten to NG++, this is your time to stop the video, go play Armored Core 6 again, finish NG++, which is very good. It's a different game, you could say. Like, it takes whole different turns, new bosses, new characters, new plot lines. Everything's different in NG++. I could not believe it when I played it. So yeah, this is your spoiler warning. If you're interested in the game but don't know if you want to pick it up, you can check out my review that I did about a week after the game launched, and I also did a video addressing the hot takes that some people were having here on YouTube. This is your spoiler warning, so go check out my other videos, play the game, and then come back. If you have already played NG++, then I'm just going to give you a brief analysis of, well, it's not going to be brief, who am I kidding? But I'm going to give you an analysis of what I thought about this incredible experience. And I did some notes, I took some notes, and I have them right here. And this is what we're gonna go over during this video. It's about 5,000 words that I have written here. So yeah, you're gonna have to be patient with me. Well, I'm not a lore YouTuber at all, but I think that I'd be disingenuous if I didn't give a full picture of the game after giving a review on the game, although it was positive before, finishing the full experience. So let's talk about it. From the beginning, there are some changes in the story. The first missions have some disparate things that don't happen on the NG+ content or even on the first playthrough. You still make the same decisions that you made in NG+. When you get to the mission that is the mission that you go and fight the Strider, the first boss fight, you could say, that you have to destroy the 4 generators to attack the main reactor that is in the weapon, the eye of the Strider. So you have a decision to make where you defend the Strider instead of attacking it. But when you arrive on that mission, some of the C weapons are they are present. It takes a whole different turn, like who activated those C weapons, if the PCA isn't already starting their campaign on Rubicon. But we're gonna have to talk about more of the factions before that. I just want to say that there are some story changes from the beginning of the game. There are new missions that I have already talked about this, but there are new missions on NG+. There are some missions that are decisions that you have to take. Either you take this mission or you take this other mission. And in NG+, you saw, especially because the different decisions that you take in the first playthrough are going to affect the decisions that you take on the second playthrough. In my first playthrough, I ended up with the ending that you kill Walter. On my second playthrough, I went and got the ending that I killed Eri. In the third playthrough, in the third NG+ playthrough, I started seeing some differences with the story and the characters. Like, especially they started like adding characters And then ALLMIND has a bigger part to play in all of this. It gives you a lot more context to the story and the factions and what their own goals are. You end up understanding each character's motivations and, you know, their backstory even better than you do in the first playthrough. And I think that the first playthrough was very good in doing that. Most characters were very simple, but you could understand their motivations, and by the end of the first playthrough, like, you understood that maybe Cinder, Carla, and Walter, you know, had something to do in the past. They were comrades, and they were on a mission with secretive organization called the Overseer to clamp down any of the Rubiconian experiments that were going on to exploit Coral. You start understanding more of the characters, and there are a lot of characters in this game. Like, I didn't even notice my first playthrough, like, since I was just playing the game, enjoying my time, but I didn't even notice that there were so many characters that appear throughout the game. You get new parts, even in NG++, like, you start getting new parts that you have to buy on the store. Like, I already bought every part for my mech. I have like 10 million credits. The missions in NG++ are insanely hard. Like, you get put with 3 guys at the same time a lot of the time, and the missions just get stupid hard. They're some of the best missions in the game, especially if you, like, by the 3rd playthrough of your game, you should already be pretty good at the game. If not, you can still, you know, go to the assembly and build your own AC for that particular mission. The missions are insanely hard and insanely fun. There's this new character called Kate Markson that appears fairly at the beginning of NG++ content, and she appears to be like complete. I don't know about Armored Core lore. I haven't seen any videos, you know, or anyone explaining to me what the hell happened during the NG++ content. So I guess that Kate Marson, it's supposed to be a name that I recognize from previous Armored Cores or something. I really don't know. But she's a new character, and she appears throughout the story, and she's kind of important because she's the watershed moment between following the already established path on the previous 2 playthroughs, or, you know, going off the beaten path and arriving at the true ending of the game. As I was talking about, the C weapons arrive or are even activated before the PCA arrives full force, and this is just in like the first 3 or 4 story missions after starting your NG++. This is mid-script JP, and I just want to point out that there are many factions, backstory, events, and there are many things that you should know at this point about those factions and events at the end of your first playthrough. So just to get a refresher if you haven't played the game in a while, first of all, there's you, the protagonist. You go by many names. Your handler calls you 621, as that's your serial number. You identify yourself using a stolen ID tag as Raven. Some locals call you a tourist. A crazy sergeant calls you Gun 13. A member of the Vespers calls you Body, but most people refer to you as Raven, even the voices in your head. So to make it less confusing, I'm going to mainly refer to the player character as the protagonist. Then there's the Coral itself. Coral seems to be an energy source that is indigenous to the planet of Rubicon. As such, it was exploited once the planet was colonized. Coral was so sought after that conflict began sparking, which led to the Fires of Ibis were an event that destroyed what little colonization efforts were made in Rubicon about half a century ago. Since then, Rubicon has been recovering from the actions of the corporations and the destruction this pertained. But apparently, Coral has a sort of biological compatibility that makes it possible for the people that were killed by the Fires of Ibis to persist as something beyond human inside the flow of the Coral itself. So the people who died really only turned into Coral energy. Most people are none the wiser, it seems, about this fact, but we'll get to that later. What's very important about this event is that it basically works as a catalyst for the events that unfold throughout the game. Rubicon is still in such condition because of the aftermath of the Fires of Ibis, and humanity doesn't appear to appreciate the scale of destruction reigniting those fires could entail. Handler Walter, he's a handler of mercenaries, which he calls hounds. He has his own agenda pertaining to Coral. He wants to keep it a secret. He uses the protagonist as a tool to fulfill the promises he made to his comrades, or so it seems. ALLMIND is a military corporation that wants to exploit Coral, very militaristic in their hierarchy and way of life, from the looks of it. They are a force to be reckoned with, but then any corporation with multiple ACs and ace pilots is going to be just that. The characters pertaining to this faction use the gun or just G as their identification tag. You even get your own tag with G13 or Gun 13. Arquebus is a secret corporation that seems very organized, almost imperialistic. They have some of the best pilots in the known universe and have turned the tide of a multitude of conflicts across the galaxy. Both ALLMIND and Arquebus are here with the explicit intent of mining the Coral and using it to further their expansion and technology. The members of this corporation use the identification tag of Vesper or B. For example, one of your strongest rivals in the game, V2 Snail. The Rubicon Liberation Front, or the RLF. They are a group of rebels that want to separate Rubicon from these greedy corporations and live in peace in the ashes of the previous civilization that ended with the fires of Ibis. It seems that they can have contact with the voices of the Coral, at least to some extent, and they are very patriotic for their homeworld. Their demands are that the corporations leave the planet alone so that they can just live a normal life, or as normal as it can be on Rubicon. ALLMIND. ALLMIND is a corporation that presents itself first as a nexus for mercenaries to up their training and skills while collecting data. Then, as time goes on, specifically on NG++, it seems that ALLMIND has more nefarious purposes in mind. They might have just stuck to the back of your mind as the guys who control the arena, but it really goes way beyond that. Eri. After a coral search at a watch point, Eri makes contact with the protagonist and can speak directly to him. By what means, we don't know, but it starts to be clear that this is some kind of corruption that the Coral is encroaching upon the protagonist. Some of the ideas she has are pretty far-fetched, and a normal person wouldn't believe that most of the things she says or even does make sense. I sided with her my first playthrough just because I wanted to see what would happen were Coral not destroyed, which was implied to be the other ending. The PCA, or the Planetary Closure Administration. If there is some sort of government out there, then this is the closest thing to their military. They apparently appear on planets that need to be closed down because they represent a danger to mankind. They appear at the midpoint of the game, and when they do, they somehow activate sea weapons, which are supposed to be Coral-based weapons. How did they get their hands on that? Maybe someone else is helping them. And it is implied that sea weapons activated on their own in one of the first missions of NG++. RAD and Cinder Carla. RAD is not that important in the grand scheme of things since they were a scapegoat group created by Cinder while her real mission on Rubicon was possible to resume. With the return of Walter and 621, she is able to resume that mission. She plays a very important role in any of the routes you take, and it turns out that Walter and her have some history, being prior comrades and sharing the same goal, basically, to destroy and burn all the Coral on Rubicon so that mankind can be saved from its horrors. So now let's get to some analysis of the story proper. Humanity has become irrelevant. You don't see any humans in the game in any playthrough. There isn't any humans in the game. The only humans that you see are actually paintings from someone who paints memories or something, that you find some paintings here and there in the game, and that's the only place where you're going to be able to see a human figure. In person, you're never going to see one. It's kind of ironic how the only real human symbol we see in the game is the RLF's banner. I find it interesting that all the corporations and everyone in the game uses different symbols, and none of them really represent, a human being. The only one that does is the RLF's banner, which is like a guy holding a flag and the sun on the back, something like that. So yeah, I find it interesting that the Rubiconians, which are people who are turning into literal embers of energy, they are the only ones that appear human in the end. Not the only ones that appear human in the end, but at the beginning they are the only ones who present themselves as simple human beings. All the other people are so detached from their humanity that they don't even bother to appear human. What really is the difference between Walter and Eri? They're both only voices in our heads. The difference is that Walter can alter events by himself because he is a physical presence, while we are being used by Eri for her, or rather the humans melded with the coral, the true Rubiconians you might call them, own agenda. So we are deciding at first in the beginning of the game, we are deciding which agenda we're gonna side with, and that obviously is going to affect the ending. But we ourselves, we do not have that much agency as a freelancer, as they say, since we are being handled by Walter. If you think about it, if we were to stop following Walter, then the only thing that happens is that we start following whatever Eri says. We're kind of at an impasse on that stuff. Coral is the future of humanity. Shall humans persist on the pursuit of power? What I understand from Coral is that it is an ever-corrupting force. There's this saying that goes, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Take out of that what you will. But my understanding of it is that as humans pursue more power, they will only end up destroying themselves more. And that could be political power, that could be energy power, whatever kind of power, but they will end up destroying themselves in the pursuit of more power. What does it mean to be human? That's the most basic bitch question to be asked, but here it's so blunt that it's almost artistic. The depiction of no physical humans whatsoever implies the irrelevancy of things we regard as important. When faced with evolution and power, humans will voluntarily give up their soul, proven time and time again. But what if the decision was forced upon you? I may be reading too much into this next point, but what really does freedom represent? You are forced to see the events of the game unfold 3 times before getting any legitimate answers. Yes, we make decisions here and there, but we still need to force ourselves to run through this gauntlet of mystery and war to understand the meaning of everything. If so, is true freedom the freedom of choice? What choices did we really make? And did they really affect the outcome? Destruction lies in all of the endings, either that being the destruction of human ambition for power, or destruction of a planet and newfound forms of civilization for the sake of saving the universe. It is strongly suggested that characters like Carla and Walter have been alive for a long time, and that they are probably survivors or were related to the fires of Ibis in some ways. And at the end of every playthrough, there seems to be like some sort of time loop or time warp that involves Coral, and maybe we're in some kind of simulation of events that continually spin the story based on our decision. Carla and Walter always have the perfect tool for the job. The only piece they were missing was you, the Raven, someone who could hold the mantle of their ideals. And the same can be said about Air. I'm liking an idea that came to my mind. So, Coral is an ever-corrupting force, and from what we see in the game, and multiple characters warns us,
where there's coral, there's blood.
Air is the manifestation of that corruption. In our protagonist's head, she is represented as a calm, collected voice, but her appearance is always sudden, interrupting, and it seems to be painful or somehow unnerving to us, since we see a red vignette that we tend to associate with our character feeling pain. And just for the sake of argument, and just to make you guys angry so that you feel that I am inconsistent, let's compare these concepts to some found in one of my favorite games ever, which also happens to be a FromSoft game, Bloodborne. While there are cosmic influences over the fate of Yharnam, the truth is that the signs were always there, and Bergenworth and the adage of the Seekers of the Eldritch Truth was, "Fear the old blood," as it was the old blood itself that which brought the destruction of humanity in that nightmarish landscape. And we have to ask ourselves, how far can we spread ourselves within the knowledge of powers that are incomprehensible, just for the sake of either knowledge, power, or just pushing beyond the limits of that humanity which burdens us and will inevitably make us pawns or sacrifices to the will of beings beyond time itself. So what do we have in Armored Core 6? A desolate world destroyed by forces that are incomprehensible to the humans that try to use it for their own agenda. There are some of those humans who are willing to sacrifice an entire planet just for the sake of seeing that fearful force controlled or even destroyed, while the force itself, the corruption that seems to be unstoppable, tries to perpetuate itself and probably consume humans. We know something that is very important for these RLF folks is the symbiosis. It implies that somehow humans and coral itself can coexist. But we see the effects of coral on one of the endings, with Walter and his AC being completely controlled by coral. And it seems that Walter is more powerful because of it. He has let go of his own leash and surrendered completely to coral's influence, giving him one last chance at trying to complete his former comrade's purpose, the burning of the coral. While Air tries to defend with all her might, using the power of coral, which is what makes me believe that coral is more of a hive mind than a symbiotic being, to try and stop us from destroying the vascular plant, which maintains the stability of the coral, from what I understand. So what is the point of this story? I think that it has everything to do with how humans will always try to exploit things they don't understand for their own benefit, and how any kind of power can corrupt and bring destruction when placed in the wrong hands. Now let's talk about the significance of the Raven, the Hounds, and their place in war. This game kind of glorifies the idea of free will and the implications of that in a place where strife and death are the only options. Similar to Berserk in some weird way, Guts doesn't really have a choice on what causality has in store for him, yet he still chooses to keep fighting, and his will remains unbroken even through all the trauma he's endured since his birth. It's the same from what we see from our protagonist. Walter implies during the tutorial level that you're an unwilling participant to this conflict.
If we get our hands on Rubicon's coral, we'll make a killing. Plenty for a merc with a fried brain like you to buy their life back.
And that your only choice in the matter is to die or fight. The events that will unfold on Rubicon during the game seem to be a determining factor to 621's fate. But little did we know that they would determine the fate of the galaxy, as conflict will surely never be the same after the knowledge of the coral's true power. So we can say that the Raven, even the call sign Raven, is meant to represent the only freedom in conflict, in which we choose how this is all going to end. Instead of ending up being a pawn for unseen forces, you end up being the deciding factor, because you are the one in the front lines. And that is why the Raven becomes a symbol, and anywhere he appears on the battlefield, the war on a global and galactic scale seems to do a complete 180. You are the focal point in the fork of the road of destiny. You are the Raven idling on the tip of the road sign, overlooking the scorched earth after each overwhelming battlefield. And once you're gone, there will come another to take that mantle. A hound remains on a leash, as a tool to the handler or the hunter, while a raven is free. A raven has many connotations in literature, mostly associated with death and bad omens, but in itself, a raven is free to roam. His appearance in events that seem tragic can be merely a coincidence, but the connection is there. Our ascendance to resemble a human might start with getting our own freedom, and also, Raven is a name that has been mainly associated to the protagonist of Armored Core games. So what the hell is up with ALLMIND? In NG++, you get taken in as a candidate for something called the Release Project that ALLMIND is concocting. It seems to be related to the events of the Coral release that Eri loves to talk about, but maybe they know something we don't. From one of the endings, we see that Coral is something not to be fricked with, because it's highly corrupting and extremely destructive. The only thing that would show mankind the horrors that it might cause was by using it to destroy Rubicon and render it a dead planet by all mankind, showing them what would happen were Coral to be used, say, on Earth. But ALLMIND seems privy to things that we do not yet understand. Apparently, ALLMIND is trying to use artificial intelligence, Coral, and simulations from mercs to create something that surpasses humankind, which is why they have such an interest in preserving Coral, and the project release totally has to do with it. You can get a mission from ALLMIND telling you to kill a double agent who turned on them, but they regard you as C4-621. C4 from your augment generation, the 4th generation, whatever that means. But basically you are surgically enhanced to pilot an AC better, and 621 being your designated number, like a product in a supermarket, your personal serial number. Still, you are an exceptional pilot that ALLMIND has reached out to. It's very vague on both fronts. We don't know how these surgical augmentations work and how the different generations are, well, different. And also, we don't know how coral corrupts or functions as an energy source. We just know that it's incredibly powerful beyond anything mankind has encountered before. It's pretty interesting how ALLMIND and Eri seem to be in cahoots with each other, because she tries to do a joke with her sounding like the ALLMIND female voice that always contacts you, but the screen being red.
Registration number RB23. Call sign Raven. Your records have been updated. Sorry, Raven. It's just me.
And now, every time ALLMIND contacts you, the red vignette associated with Eri appears. Both Rusty and O'Keefe have dealings with ALLMIND. These are both guys that you fight multiple times during the, well, actually only Rusty, but these are guys that you encounter during the campaign and in the arena, so they are relevant to the story, and they know shit about ALLMIND, but, you know, they're not willing to give out that information. Even though they're both Vespers, they seem to be outsiders of that group. So they somehow infiltrated the corporations and they are somehow related to ALLMIND. But I think the extent to which ALLMIND controls them is left very vague. If they are experiencing what we are experiencing, like Eri, then maybe Coral is behind ALLMIND or ALLMIND is behind Coral. It's hard to say at this point, but I'm leaning towards an ulterior motive from ALLMIND to go through with all this trouble just to keep their missions a secret to everyone else in universe. In one of the pre-briefings of one of the missions, Walter says,
Let me tell you a story before you go. There once was a scientist. He abandoned his family to delve into the secrets of Coral. His work yielded a carnival of horrors, augmentation surgery included. But there was another scientist. He took his colleagues' sins upon himself and set it all ablaze. Died with no regrets. There's a lesson in this story. Once something's alive, it doesn't die easy.
what we can extrapolate from that quote, now that we have a bigger picture of the full story behind Rubicon and its first cataclysmic event, Walter, Carla, Eri, and a lot of the main characters in this story seem to know more about the Coral Convergence, the Coral's true power, and the corporations, our lefts, and ALLMIND's intentions. But we don't know much about them. It's all about having control, preserving or destroying Coral. Most of the characters gloss over the implications of the Coral voices being the future of humanity, since the envisioned future was one of augmented pilots, like we see in the game. But maybe it's just the Coral enacting its will upon us, brainwashing us to thinking it's a force for good, when it's really a force for corruption and destruction. ALLMIND is protecting you from the corporation. ALLMIND gives you the warning that V2 Snail is going to betray you and try to get rid of you after you reach the Coral Convergence. If you take this mission, you get the ALLMIND route to the ending. 4 AC pilots are dead after that mission and you are considered killed in action too. They're trying to get you out and under their protection, whatever that means. After escaping and being collected by ALLMIND, but not before killing one of the last Vespers, B3 Pater, we are now under their protection, and the Coral Release project is now fully unveiled to us. We are to literally release the Coral outside of Rubicon's atmosphere so that it can fully corrupt the entire galaxy and lead mankind to its next evolutionary step. So that's what ALLMIND thinks is gonna happen with the Coral Release. But what the fuck, we know exactly what Coral does. Is that really a good idea? How is this going to act to help ALLMIND achieve its goal of human progress and advancement in technology? Also, ALLMIND acknowledges the existence of Eri, which can mean that either Air is, I don't know if to call her Air or Eri, I think it's Eri. She's somehow allied to ALLMIND, or that they understand way too much about Coral and its corrupting properties. So now, after beating the final boss, let's talk about him. That was a great fucking fight. That shit was lit. I died a ton. Obviously it was the last boss. I was expecting to maybe have to fight the fight over and over again for 2-3 hours just to get past it. But no, I actually took like, I think it was like 1 hour just to beat the both faces of the boss, and get to know the guy and dance with him. And it was a really good fight. I liked it. Yeah, it's kind of Dark Soulsy, but that's the point. It's the last boss. The fact that okay, I'm just gonna talk about him with the script. The first phase of the boss is against like 6 Iguazus and a huge AC that has a very damaging laser rifle. It serves more like a DPS check more than anything. But the implication here is that G5 Iguazu from the Balaam group, he has merged himself with ALLMIND. He is now an AI, like we suspect that a lot of people in universe are AIs. So the second phase of the fight is when things get real. And I think this is my favorite boss introduction from any FromSoft game. Yes, even more than Biker Amelia. The sea spiders can be mainly ignored, you just have to stay airborne and mobile at all times. When Iguazu ALLMIND drops below 50% health, then he starts his anime phase, using a laser rake that extends to the fucking sun, but really all you have to do is dance with him, by staying right above him or below him, which sounds way easier than it really is since he moves a lot. This last boss was a pretty cool set piece, and I really got my ass hanging from the edge of my desk. What the fuck did I write? This last boss was a pretty cool set piece and really got my ass hanging from the edge of my desk. And not just because I'm fat as fuck. That's what I wrote in my script. I'm very sorry, guys. What I meant to say is that it got my ass hanging from the edge of my seat. I don't know why I wrote desk there. It was pretty late, I think. After beating ALLMIND and ending the threat to our existence, though I don't know why ALLMIND wanted us out of the way, I guess you can think that they were trying to assimilate our mind into itself, like it did with Iguazu, as it thinks that the next evolutionary step of humanity was to be the assimilation of humans with technology. And she thinks, being an AI herself, ALLMIND, that the coral release will help speed up that process by starting a symbiosis and ending with a full takeover. Again, themes of corruption. We finally see what the coral release really was. A fucking black hole made from an implosion of coral energy focalized on the top of the vascular plant. As this event unfolds, it explodes into a blinding light. We then appear in a beach somewhere on a planet that looks kinda like Earth. There are hundreds of other ACs lying there, same as us. We wake up and all the other ACs start moving on their own, with red lights, like we saw in Coral Corrupted or Machine Based on Coral. This implies that the coral release was really a way to preserve the existence of those humans that were lost in the fires of Ibis. It is implied that we merged with Eri, goddammit, becoming a single sentient being that resides for eternity inside of the AC. We are indestructible, and we are, all of us, are coral. And every great shonen anime needs a beach episode. The themes of death and rebirth are too obvious in this ending, especially with the context of the other endings. The choice here was destroy everything or fuck everyone and preserve everything in peace, which would inevitably lead to further conflict. So the ALLMIND ending is pretty interesting because it gives us more syntax to work with on their purpose and the purpose of Coral itself. We have a hopeful ending, with humans, ACs, and the Rubiconians who lost their body now reborn as something beyond human, in a place where they can roam eternally free. As long as conflict doesn't spark up again between them, I guess. Which is implied by the final line, spoken by Eri herself.
Main system. Activating combat mode.
Isn't that pretty close to Evangelion? The Human Instrumentality Project, developed as a joint operation between SEAL, NERV, and the freaking United Nations, was intended to guide humanity to surpass the shackles of their body by merging every human into a formless entity that engulfed the entire planet, known as the LCL soup or primordial soup. In there, each person's psyche and soul would be dissolved, and everything personal would become an abstract concept. As personalities merged, souls dissolved into faded echoes, memories turned into reliving nightmares eternally. It was a real horrid position to be in. And humans were nothing more than a sacrifice for the ritual that was necessary for all this to happen. But a few select fellow humans would escape this eternal torment by fusing their souls in the process inside of an AVA unit, flowing through space and time eternally, as remnants of the history of mankind. Which is very similar to the apparent purpose of the Coral Release Project, which turned every living soul that was engulfed by the ensuing explosion into a merged being or consciousness with eternal energy and infinite potential. But who is to say that is not what originally happened to everyone in some way or another? We don't see any humans at all. Is it possible that every interaction we have in the game really boils down to different AI personalities piloting mechs? If even Eri is capable of controlling an AC, what proof do we have that there are actual living humans inside the ACs? This is getting my noggin going like 100 an hour. Everything has been absolutely fascinating. This NG double plus content, or whatever you want to call it, is something that for sure needs to be lauded upon. Beautiful execution of an incredibly complex and personal story, meant to be interpreted differently by everyone who experiences it. We also get a pretty sick A&B as credits, with some experimental Russian post-punk serving as our backing track. Closing thoughts. First of all, I loved going through this game like a completely new experience. It's such a treat to start up a game that you only know the basic premise of and just enjoy the ride, beginning to end, with no one spoiling any of the content for you. And NG Plus was the peak moment of the whole thing. I didn't watch any videos on it, I didn't even know there was anything else after NG Plus, and that's why I just sort of left it for a while. But when you guys told me that there was more content in NG Double Plus than in NG Plus, I was like, whoa, I gotta get to that shit fast. And boy was I awestruck with that end boss. It was incredible to fight a bunch of ACs as the last boss. I didn't even think they would do that, considering how sparingly they spread out the multi-AC fights throughout the length of the game. So ending with something so grand as that introduction to the final ALLMIND AC, it made the entire thing worth it. I actually thought it was way easier than any other FromSoft true end boss, but I think that was intentional, as you really have to exploit everything in your power to get through this gauntlet. Now, about the so-called true ending, which is the ending of the ALLMIND route. Now that I've got a few days of ruminating over the experience that ending was, and just thinking about the whole ordeal of the game, here I have my final thoughts on what this all means. At the start of the game, we see humanity reigniting a war that happened decades ago in a dying planet that wanted nothing more but to be left alone. Basically, we see a whole lot of conflict. igniting everywhere we go. There was some devastation, like the explosion that led to the first Baltius fight, the sky turning red after destroying the ice worm and stuff like that. But in this ending, we still do not see any humans, only their most animated and capable representation in the game, which are ACs. So a bunch of people survived the explosion and got merged with the AC, along with the Coral Boys, at least in our case as the protagonist. Both Airy and C4621 RB23G13 Raven, that's his full name, can we agree on that? What does that mean for the people trapped inside the ACs? Well, their volition is unlimited, since they have coral inside them. In Rubicon, we see machines that have survived decades on remnants of that energy. It may not be infinite, but it sure seems to last more than a lifetime. Not only that, but the people who got turned into the voices of the coral during the Fires of Ibis now have a body to call their own, or well, that they share eternally with another consciousness. It's unclear how that works, but that's what I get from it. As I said before, it is very Evangelion-like in how many ways you can interpret that ending. But I think that my assessment is the most logical, and everyone who paid attention and got to this point probably understood the whole thing similarly to what I did. But if you have any theories or thoughts about this, please share them on the comments. Some things of note on the ending as a whole, for example, Iguazu really turned out to be an interesting character. At first, I wasn't sure of him. I thought he was a bit edgy and immature, so I just brushed him aside. But I kept running into him or hearing about him in multiple missions. Even then, I never expected him to be the final boss, especially not in the form he ended up as. I think ALLMIND was really an AI that overtook the organization itself and used it as a front to extend its reach, knowledge, and thus power. It's very interesting, and it came out of left field for me, since from the first playthrough and even to the end of the second one, ALLMIND is always such a neutral force that the only thing that's weird is that they keep tabs on every merc in the galaxy. Now that I think about it, Cinder Carla mentions this at the start of her arena fight.
Kinda creepy to go around ranking strangers, don't you think? Well, whatever.
It all makes sense immediately when you see the ALLMIND Iguazu abomination and their plans to use the Coral Release project as some sort of form of creating an army or amassing more power by uniting the consciousness of all Rubiconians into a single entity. That's what I think was up and why some people ended up merging with it, like ALLMIND. Because if I had to go through all that shit to keep up with the ALLMIND route, going through the game like 3 times, then obviously you'd think you're on the winning side. I actually really wanted to see what was ALLMIND's plan in the end for the Coral Release project. And if it made enough sense, I maybe would have sided with them. But it seems our destruction was preordained. And it speaks volumes to how manipulative and Machiavellic an AI can turn out to be. Armored Core 6 has really made me get into the lore from a FromSoft game on my own. And after all this, if you disagree or have some sources to prove that what I'm saying is wrong, that's completely okay. And you're probably right, since I really don't delve into the logs and archives you find throughout the game. I still haven't gotten all the combat logs, I haven't ranked every mission in the game, no sir, and I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. The soul of the FromSoft experience is right there, if you dare to go and find it. It will take practice and maybe some time and tinkering, but the world building, the lore, the characters, it's all there, and it's even better than you can imagine. And I will play a clip from one of the bros on YouTube that I follow, Ratatusker, as he says it a lot better than I ever could and with such confidence.
I love it. I love it. It's my favorite game in a year that has had a lot of excellent titles. And maybe more importantly, it serves as proof that FromSoftware can do no wrong. FromSoftware can make any game from any genre, and it instantly turns to gold.
I love this game to death. This is easily my favorite game of the year, and I hope I can keep talking about it for a while longer, since it really has put into perspective how in-depth and how much you can take out of the story from a FromSoft title if you stop and take notes of your own. Wow, it's really an unbelievable experience. I can't believe that I didn't do it for Elden Ring and such. And well, this video wouldn't have been possible without all of you guys interacting with me on the previous video, on the comments. It really was an inspiration for me to push onwards and reveal the true ending of the game, and it felt great. Thanks to everyone who commented and contributed to my comment section. This video is actually dedicated to you guys. If you made it this far into the video, I can only thank you infinitely. You are the bomb. I hope you enjoy my essay on things that I can't even begin to comprehend, but I enjoyed very much writing and editing about it. Since you made it this far, how about subscribing and liking the video? You have no idea how much that will help the channel grow, and it serves as a metric to let me know what kind of content I should focus on. Also, go check out Punky's or Punky or Punky or Punky Punky's channel. Go check out Punky's channel. He made a what the fuck was that? He made a great 8-minute video based on his first impressions of the game, being a prior fan of the Armored Core games, and I found it and thought it was great. It's his first video on his channel actually, so go check it out. It's going to be interesting to see where this guy goes. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon on the next video.
And that's why Armored Core serves basically as a remake of Star Fox 64. Look, it's almost an on-rails shooter. You have rivals who appear and reappear throughout the campaign. You have a cool escape sequence from an exploding tunnel. Your dad's ghost encourages you at the end.